Y is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
The common denominator is practice. Everybody's trying to get better at something. And whether that something is opera singing at one end of the scale or business enterprise at the other end of the scale, gardening, relationships, sports, there are fundamental things you can think about that'll make all of that easier. And so that's what I tried to get at in this new book.
So practice in a lot of people's mind, though everyone knows it's critical to anything you're going to do well, it's also kind of a dirty word because a lot of us don't like that part of it.
The practice, the common understanding of practice is it's the hard stuff, it's the fun, the non-fun stuff. Like if I'm a musician, well, when I was a singer-songwriter, I wanted to write songs. I hated doing scales. It wasn't interesting to me. So the first thing we need to do is broaden our understanding of what the word practice really means. Practice goes beyond practicing certain things to get better at them and actually envelops the whole process. Everything that you're doing in pursuit of your goals is part of your practice. For myself, as an example, this moment in time that we're in right now, part of my practice in writing the book was writing the book. Part of my practice was editing the book. Part of it was getting feedback. Part of it was doing cover design. Part of it was publishing. And part of it now is promotion. All of these things are part of practice. Some of them are more fun than others. And part of what you come to understand about practice is it's not all fun stuff, but you can do the stuff that's not fun without resisting it or hating that you have to do it. So,
well, and that reminds me sort of the way the word practice is utilized and understood through something like yoga, right? You do your yoga practice. I still can't stand on my head, but I continue to practice to try to do that. And it
I'd
feels
pay money
better.
to see you try that.
I know.
Yeah.
If you pay me the money, I'll try it. As long as the money comes to me.
Yes.
But it's to me that I can get on board with that easier than when I was learning to play the piano and I had to, learn to play scales instead of learning to play Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue.
Well, a part of it is we're drawn to stuff that we're good at and enjoy doing.
Yes.
In my book, I describe this as there is this thing called the intersection of passion and purpose, where passion is the stuff that you're good at and enjoy doing, and purpose is the mark you want to make on the world. So if you have two different practices, yoga and piano, one of those is going to be easier and more fun for you. You're just going to be better at it. It might not lead you where you want to go strategically in your life, but you always have the option of saying, hey, if it's a choice between an easy fun practice and a hard not fun practice, why don't I just focus on the easy fun one? That will make my life rise. That'll make me feel better about myself and give me a greater sense of achievement. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
Well, my wife always has this analogy that we've tried to pass along to the kids, that it's okay to quit. It's okay to go, I tried it. I was open-minded. Soccer is just not for me. Do you ascribe to that? Do you think there's something that just no matter how much you practice, you will get incrementally better? But I mean, I want to say, oh, you won't be Pele, but
Well, there's a lot going on there. One is you're making assumptions about the goal of being in practice. The assumption that you're making is the goal is to get best.
Right.
You take soccer as an example. No matter how much I play soccer, I'm never going to be the best. I don't have the physical tools for it. But I can set a completely different goal for my practice of soccer, which is to be better at it today than I was yesterday, to invest time and energy in improving my skills. Whatever my physical capabilities are, and whatever the limitations of those capabilities are, there's always room for improvement in the act of the thing. Again, with limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know the tipping point between that thing that you just continue to grow at, but are never going to be exceptional at. And the thing that it's just like, you know what? This isn't going to be part of my practice long term.
What is required are two qualities, and the qualities are awareness and acceptance. Awareness of where I am in my practice, what I'm doing with it, and acceptance of the reality of that. Here's what I'm getting at. Somebody might say, I think I want to be a writer. And they start writing for a while and they get bad outcomes because they're not very good at it yet. And so they say, well, writing's not for me. Now, it's not clear whether writing isn't for them or they just got frustrated at the failure and quit. So with awareness, we can look at what we're in the middle of and say, with all honesty and with all acceptance, I've gotten as good at this as I'm going to get. And it's never going to take me to stratospheric heights. So I can look around and find something that it's easier for me to be better at than this thing here. But that's different from quitting because you're frustrated. And this is why I say it requires awareness and acceptance. You need to be seeing yourself as you are and then accepting yourself as you are in order to make a decent evaluation over whether it's fruitful to continue walking down this path or not. Let me give you an example. At a certain point, not too many years ago, I decided I wanted to try my hand at art. I'd never done it before, and I wanted to see how good I could get at it. Got pretty good with digital art. Never made very much progress with hand drawing because I had two physical limitations that definitely held me back. One is my eyes can't hold focus on something that's close up for very long periods of time. And the other is I have some damage in my shoulder, which means that if I hold a pen or brush long enough, I start to feel pain. So an objective analysis of this is I don't have the physical tools to put in the time it will take me to achieve the highest level of my personal ability as a visual artist, as a drawing artist. But at the same time, I have an artistic eye. I like to think about artistic execution, and I have discovered and developed a lot of digital tools that will support me as I seek to improve my performance as an artist. In other words, I can grow as an artist in general, although I may find that there are specific lanes of art that I can't grow fruitfully in because I lack the physical tools. You don't know this because I'm not standing up, but I'm a short guy. I'm 5'5". So it doesn't matter how many hours I spend shooting baskets. I'm never going to be tall enough to play basketball.
Don't sell yourself short, John.
I
I believe in you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. But even at that, there's a value judgment attached to a negative self-evaluation. I say to myself, I'm never going to be a great basketball player. If I hear a little voice in my head that then says, therefore I suck, then I'm in a problem, then I'm in a hole. If the little voice in my head says, okay, that's the reality, I'm in acceptance of that reality, then I've made a disconnection, an important disconnection between the objective evaluation of where I am and what I'm capable of, and the subjective emotional value judgment that I place on top of that. When I'm in that state, when anybody's in that state, free from subjective evaluation, free from negative judgment, then all kinds of joyful progress is possible because we're never burdened by the sense of failure that comes automatically if we don't think it through. Anytime we find ourselves saying, I'm not achieving what I want to achieve, therefore I suck, therefore I'm a failure, therefore I hate myself. There's a lot of therefores there that don't really stand up to full examination. I can say objectively and kind of proudly about anything I at all, well, that sucks. What I did there, that really sucks. But I don't assign a negative value judgment to it. I don't feel bad about myself. So when we speak about being in practice and serving the goal of just getting better at what you want to get better at, the tool that helps this is the understanding, kind of doesn't matter whether the outcome's a good outcome or a bad outcome. The only thing that really matters is having an outcome, doing a thing, creating something, whether that something is an aria or a business plan, and then saying, okay, this is the thing I created. This is where it's strong. This is where it needs to be more strong. The way I like to put it is, this is where it is. This is where it needs to get to. What steps can I take to close the gap between where it is and where I need to get to? And back to your original point, Heidi, I might reach a point where I say, frankly, there are no steps I can take to close the gap. This is a gap that simply will not close. At that point, with a certain amount of joy, well, with a certain amount of sense of liberation, I say, okay, that's something I'm going to have to set aside. You guys know I'm a writer of long experience, and you also know that I teach and train writers. So I know a little bit about what it means to confront, I'm going to use a phrase, a broken story. A broken story is something you set out to write, a novel or a screenplay, something like that. And you reach a point where you realize no matter how much time and energy I put into this, this is a problem that I'm not currently able to solve. I don't have the tools. I don't have the research. I don't have the understanding. I don't have the self-knowledge. I don't have the emotion or the heart. There's something missing. This story is broken and I can't fix it. My hard drive is stuffed with broken stories. Many orders of magnitude more broken stories than stories that actually work. The writers I work with get used to hearing me say, this story is broken for these reasons. That's not a problem. That just means we have to go looking for a different story or a different approach. Earlier today, I was on a Zoom with clients of mine in the Czech Republic. I'm in Los Angeles, but I get to work with people all over the world. And I was commending these guys because it was a team of writers, fairly new in situation comedy. And I sent them back to rewrite their story from scratch 3 times. And I said to them, as our work starts to wind down now, because you're really starting to get it, I have to tell you what I admire most about what you did was the willingness you showed to set it aside and start over, to allow change to come in. Because when we look at practice, any kind of practice, the willingness to sacrifice prior gains for the sake of potential greater gains, that's the key that makes a lot of stuff work. But there's an ego block, and the ego block is, if I've worked all this time and all this hard on this story and it doesn't work, and now I have to set it aside, what does that say about me? I'm afraid that says about me, I suck and I have to hate myself. That's where self-analysis, self-acceptance, self-awareness operate on practice to liberate it from this thing that will eventually otherwise crush it. I'm jabbering, please.
Do you think it's interesting because you're saying and I came in a little bit late, but if you I blame my children, if you use that term practice to cover all sorts of efforts done in the attainment of a goal or the reaching of a goal, like you said with the book, writing the book, editing the book, promoting the book, making the cover, all of those things. Do you think just that concept and that idea is sort of the new part of this? Because I feel like, to go back to Chuck Palahniuk, the writer, signed a copy of one of his books to me and he just wrote a sentence a day at least. And he said, these words have served me well, and handed me the book back. But this idea of saying practice in an art form, in your case, in writing, it can encompass all these other things. So you are always moving forward in some way, even if, to use your example, part of the story is broken and you just haven't figured it out yet. Do you think that's part of the thing that kind of helps change the approach?
Yes, and awareness that not all parts of process are as fun as you'd like them to be.
No, tell me about it.
I have a friend who is a heart surgeon, and he says the only part of his job he likes is cutting people open. And I completely dig that. The rest of the stuff he does, seeing patients in the office, billing, insurance, conferences, study, whatnot, examinations, all of that is just the stuff he does to support the part of the process that he loves the most. It's axiomatic that whatever your practice is, there are parts you enjoy more and parts you enjoy less. What's that saying? There has to be a second place. If there are two things going on, one's better than the other. Like myself, I know that I like rewriting better than I like writing. I love it when I finished a draft of something and then I can go back and really start making it good. So I'm aware that when it comes to those two parts of the act of writing, there's one kind I like better than the other. But I don't get to the good one without going through the bad one. So I need to be in acceptance of the need to conduct all parts of the practice, even the parts of the practice that I'm not such a big fan of. Again, I'm living in that moment right now. I don't mind doing promo. I love talking about my stuff. I just give me a microphone, give me an audience, and I will jabber forever. But there's a lot that goes into that I don't particularly like. Oh, social media, sending out emails, even just thinking about, all right, it's time to promote the new book. Let's take off the writer hat, put on the marketer hat, with kind of a certain knowledge that no matter how well the book does, it's not going to do as well as I'd like it to do, just in the nature of books. So there's a lot going on inside the writer's mind that has to do with writing and also has to do with the other parts of the writing practice that support the writing. And this is true no matter what your practice is. I'll give you another example. I don't know if you know this, but I have a whole other practice in educational consulting. I help people get into top MBA programs, Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, Wharton, places like that. Very high level stuff. Now, I have candidates who love writing the essays, hate taking the graduate management admission test. I have candidates who love the testing, hate the writing. Everybody likes some part of the process and hates another part of the process. But if their goal is to get into business school, they're going to have to embrace all parts of the process no matter what. Here's where acceptance comes in. Because you can look at that moment and you can say, I have to do this thing I don't like, and I hate that I have to do it. Or you can say, I have to do this thing that I don't like, but I make the conscious choice not to hate it. I make the conscious choice to accept that it needs to be done. Then I've improved the situation at least this much. I'm still doing something I don't want to do or don't like doing, but I'm doing it in a positive versus a negative frame of mind. So I just naturally feel better about it. In other words, there will be bad outcomes. There will be struggles. You will find yourself challenged and you will have to meet challenges. But if you say to yourself, I am defeated by this challenge and I hate that I have to face it, you're putting yourself on your back foot. If you turn it around and you say, I embrace this challenge and I will do the best I can to meet it, you improve your frame of mind. You feel better about yourself because you see yourself doing stuff that's in your own interest. And you also get better outcomes because you're not blocked by your own negative self-judgment.
Do you think that's, and maybe I'm just rephrasing the same question again, which is always what I can't stand. But the idea of one taking away the elementary school practice makes perfect mentality and look at it more as sort of the George Plimpton school of, well, I tried it. I think I learned something and I enjoyed the process of doing it. And that's what's the key, is even if there are parts that aren't fun, I got to try this thing. I know a little bit about it. I can talk about this. I can say, yes, I did that. Is that the key? When it comes to even writing a book, you can say, you know what, I wrote a book. Wasn't good, but I wrote it.
And learned enough to do better the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the history of pretty much every screenwriter, because you write a bunch of screenplays before any of them are really good enough to be seen by other human beings. And part of what you have to accept is, I have to learn my craft. And the only way I can learn my craft is by creating outcomes that I know probably won't be any good. I think there's another thing that will help. Friends say that I have a gift for reducing complex concepts to trivial one-liners, and I sign
Perfect.
on to
Lay it
that.
on it. Lay it on
That's
us.
I stand by
amazing.
that. You use the phrase practice makes perfect. I hate that phrase for a couple of reasons. One is there's really no such thing as perfect. And the other is it just makes everything sound so tedious. I prefer the phrase practice makes progress because viewed through that filter, you can't lose. Anytime you're in your practice, you're making progress. And who doesn't like progress? This is the way I think about my writing days, my art days, all of my stuff. Everything I'm doing, whether the outcome turns out to be useful or not, gives me the opportunity to invest more time and effort in improving my craft. And if I set my goal as invest more time and effort in improving my craft, I will always succeed because all I got to do to win is invest time and invest effort. I don't care about the outcome. I have, as the Buddhists will say, I have detached from outcome. And when I'm detached from outcome, I don't care whether it's a good result or a bad result. Then I can focus on practice makes progress, devoting time and energy to progressing toward the advancement of my craft. It's also useful. Sorry, go ahead,
No,
Heidi.
you go ahead, then I'll
I
jump
was
in.
just going to say, without throwing in too many P words, it's also useful to think about this in the context of path. As individual humans walking this earth, we are all in one form or another on a path. Some of us have a greater awareness that we're on a path, some have less awareness. Some accept or reject the notion that we're on a path. And some say, okay, well, I'm on a path, but I don't really know what that means. For myself, I define it this way. I am on a path to becoming more of who I am and acquiring a deeper understanding of who that person is. How do I advance along this path? By investing time and effort in craft, by getting better at the things that I want to get better at. So now I've taken this idea of practice and I'm saying to myself, it's not just giving me a better outcome, a better book, something I can sell. It's contributing to the elevation of myself as a human being. The act of being in practice is advancing me down my path. And if you pull back and you look at your life from kind of an absolute objective term, what is the purpose of life? To me, the purpose of life is to walk my path. And as long as I am walking my path, I need not worry about whether the outcomes are good or bad, because just having outcomes, doing more things, that's the stuff that pushes me down my path.
So, and you're sharing so much amazing information. I don't want to spoil everything in the book, but
How does it end?
Stop. No,
Go ahead.
I'm actually starting at the beginning, but because I feel from our conversations, and I love everything you're saying, that the first practice we have to get to or practice is the practice of being able to practice. So what I mean by that is societally and culturally and historically and pop culturally, so many of us have been trained for the practice is perfect, has been trained that if you're not successful unless you're a gazillionaire and all of these things. So we have to practice undoing all that to do the things you're doing. So I'm hoping and assuming that there's a section in the book that kind of gets people started on that path or that journey.
Well, I'm hoping and assuming so too.
Okay, good. Then that's all that matters.
We'll find out.
Yes.
We'll find out. But stipulate, each of us has programming.
Right.
Maybe the programming is benign. That is to say, the people who programmed us had our best interests in heart. Maybe the programming is not so benign. It differs from person to person. From my own experience, in the time and place where I grew up, it was understood, guy like me with my background, I'm going to go to university, then I'm going to go to get a graduate degree, and I'm going to be a professional of a certain sort, doctor, lawyer, something like that. That was the programming that was presented to me. At a critical moment in my life, around the age 25, I looked at that proposition and I said, well, the people who gave me this programming, my parents, very well intentioned. They want me to have a good life. It just so happens that my self-study and my revelations and my work have led me to believe that that's not the path for me. So even though I respect the intention of the people who put the programming on me, it's my job now to separate from that programming and program myself for my own goals. One of the reasons I wrote this book speaks directly to this point. When I was 20, 25 years old and setting myself free from 9-to-5-ism, I didn't have good maps to follow. I didn't have resources that I could read and say, okay, that's how it's done. That's how one lives the life of, I didn't even know what to call it. These days, I know, looking back on it, I have been what I call a serial creative entrepreneur. I didn't recognize it when I was 25. I would love to have had somebody come along to me and say, hey, you know what? It looks like what you want to be is a serial creative entrepreneur. And I would have said, exactly. Thank you for giving me that. I wrote this book with the intention of it being the sort of book that would have helped young me at a critical moment in my life when I needed it. And like everything I write, it ended up helping me, a tremendous amount, because you know how it is. You write a book that's telling other people how to live their lives more effectively. If you're doing your job right, it's probably going to make you live your own life a little more effectively.
Sure.
Certainly that's the case with me. As I get into these issues of awareness and acceptance, I'm constantly asking myself, where am I in awareness and acceptance? And I'm at a certain stage in my life where I'm doing a lot of looking back and a lot of contemplating of the road not taken and having messages alive in my head that it's okay not to have taken the roads you didn't take. Day in and day out, that's palliative, that's soothing to me. So in the sense that every author is the first reader of every book that author writes, and really the most avid reader by orders of magnitude. This is a book that has helped me a lot in the writing and the reflection of it, because my journey is not complete. I'm still walking my path. There's still more growth for me as I seek to become more me.
To that end, how long did it take you to write this book? Slash, how long in your process, how far along in your process do you think you could have written this book?
That's a great question, and I can give you a really precise answer, because I wrote the first draft in the early days of the pandemic, and then set it down and didn't pick it up for a good 2 years because I had written the wrong book. I was aware that I had written the wrong book, but I couldn't stand to do the work of making it the right book. The problem was that the book was way too long, and the information that was useful to readers was interspersed with a lot of stuff about me and my experience. In other words, I was saying, here's how I came by this idea, and this is what I was thinking at the time, and now let me share the idea with you. And I decided I got to go back and squeeze out the stupid, get rid of everything that's not directly relevant to the reader, and then take that point and boil it down to its simplest possible form. I made a commitment that if I was talking about a topic and I went more than 2 pages on that topic, I'd gone too far. I wasn't making it simple enough. That was just a choice I made. But I couldn't really make progress with the book until I grew comfortable enough to say, okay, that earlier version didn't quite work. It's the platform that I intended to stand on to create a version that does work. And now, with the passage of time, I'm finally ready to take it on. That's something that's very common in my own experience. There are a lot of things that I've tried to do and I wasn't quite ready. And so I gently set them aside and waited until I came back to them and found that I was ready, or came back to them and found that I was never going to be ready. So from inception to here, about 3 years, maybe a little bit more. In terms of the hard work of turning that bad, fat manuscript into a sleek, skinny, now this friendly, easy to use book, the Book of
Easily
Practice.
available, yeah.
Freely available and inexpensively priced at $10 a copy. That took about 6 or 7 months of hard work, of day in and day out work, just to boil it down to what I wanted it to be. But I wasn't done. Then I just reached the point of saying, okay, the content is now generally where it needs to be. Now let's format it. Now let's copy edit it. Now let's proofread it. Now let's do the cover art. Because I'm a serial creative entrepreneur, I'm going to do the cover art myself. by the way, that's my cover art, and it's pretty snazzy.
Thank
You
you.
people listening at home can't see it, but let me just tell you, it's the most dazzling book cover you'll ever see in your life.
Yeah, it's somehow sexy, almost vaguely erotic, but also incredibly intelligent and witty at the same time.
Mesmerizing.
Yeah, that's a
And
good word. That's a good word.
yes, and it fills one with a sense of envy and admiration.
Joie de
See?
vivre.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, like joie de
definitely.
vivre, right?
All at
Like
once.
it makes me, I look at that book cover and I say to myself, I want to buy that cover artist a drink.
Mm.
I mean, but of course.
But of course,
And when everyone sees the cover, they should immediately buy the artist a drink, whether it involves sending them money to purchase said drink.
of course.
Mhm.
Well, and now we get into another problem. Let's unwind this a little bit because, you know, part of what I say in the book is you got to be honest on a lot of levels. So this is me being honest. I can't sell enough copies of a book like this to make any kind of difference in my standard of living. It will be a revenue stream alongside other revenue streams, but it's not going to change my life. It's not going to be a difference maker. So there must necessarily be two things, and they're kind of in conflict with one another. One thing I have to have is the willingness to support and promote the book without getting paid for it. And the other is to care about the money, to care about getting paid for it,
Right.
because otherwise, why am I doing this? So I might experience some self-consciousness. I meet somebody at a book signing, at a book fair, and I say to them, this book is attractively priced at $10. If you pay me $10, it's not going to make any difference in my life. You could pay me $0 or $20 or $200, maybe $200. I don't know. That's a different story. But
Yeah.
but the difference in my life, the difference between $0, $10, and $20, immaterial. But I can't give the book away to everybody all the time. It's disrespectful of the process. Like, why did I do it if I don't have enough faith in it to charge something for it? Although, at this stage in my life, when I think about my body of work, I kind of feel like it's more important to launch the books than it is to sell the books, because I want the books to have a reality and existence outside of myself, so that when I leave this life, there is an interpretation of my thought that's left behind. If I get the book out there to the place where people can find it and continue to find it, then I've kind of done my job, whether I get paid or not. But I am in a privileged position. I have other sources of revenue. I have a history of earning as being an older person, but this book isn't for me. This book is for a 25-year-old singer-songwriter who says, how can I advance from open mics where they don't pay me to church coffee houses where they pay me $15? How can I get to that $15? And that $15 actually matters to me. This book is not a practical guide to getting paid. And so I really can't tell you how to get that $15. But it puts forth the notion that getting paid is important, but there are other things that are important as well. And if you focus on the other things, paradoxically, you're actually going to kind of end up being in a position where you can get paid a little quicker and a little bit better. Let's break that down. Let's imagine I'm a stand-up comic and I can't get cleared. Do you know what that means? In stand-up comedy terms, if you go to open mics, you're performing for free, and somebody somewhere is passing judgment on your work. And what they're saying is you're good enough to the point where we'll pay you next to nothing instead of literally nothing. That's called getting cleared. So you've been cleared to perform, people will book you and they will pay you the pittance that journeyman stand-up comics earn. Okay, well, let's say you're doing open mics and you can't get cleared. Now you stand at a crossroad. You say to yourself, I can't get cleared. I feel so bad about not getting cleared that I want to quit. So I quit. And once you quit, you're never getting cleared, right? If you say instead, I can't get cleared yet, I might never get cleared, but I know if I quit, I'm definitely never going to get cleared. The only way I can ever put myself on the path to getting paid is to continue to invest in myself doing work that I know I'm not getting paid for. Otherwise, there is no chance of a win, of a victory, of stepping up. So for a young person trying to build a creative practice or any kind of practice wherein they can get paid, the challenge isn't really, I can't get paid. The challenge is really, I can't get paid. What am I going to do with that information? Am I going to surrender to it, or am I going to transcend it? And if I wish to transcend it, what tools am I going to use to do that? Turns out, craft, practice, going back and doing more of the stuff you've been doing, generating more outcomes without paying too much attention to the fact that you're getting paid or not getting paid. Because investment of time and energy into craft is what advances us toward greater and greater wins in our lives.
The Book of Practice, How to Do Better What You Want to Do Well by John Vorhaus is available right now wherever you get your books. For more information, check out John's website, John Vorhaus, that's VORHAUS.com.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?